in the previous session, we looked at connective tissue. We looked at the cells of the connective tissue. We talked about how cells are divided into either fixed or wandering cells. And we did mention the types of cells that are fixed and the ones that are wandering. And we went ahead and talked about what is composed of extracellular matrix. What is it that is in the extracellular matrix and what produces the extracellular matrix? And we said that the cell that is mainly responsible for production of extracellular matrix in connective tissue is the cell known as the fibroblast. And then we did go ahead that different types of cells produce different types of connective tissue. We mentioned that we have cells such as chondroblasts, osteoblasts, okay, depending on what tissue they produce. We have cells such as reticulocytes. We also mentioned that the extracellular matrix of connective tissue is made up of different things. And the first thing that we talked about is the stem cells. And then we went ahead and talked about the fibers that make up the extracellular matrix. And we said that these fibers are divided into 3 types. And those 3 types include, one, we have collagen fibers, which we said there is about 28 types of collagen from type 1 to type 28, but there are just a number of them that are usually common, and so they're the ones that are talked about the most. We also went ahead and talked about reticular fibers, which are found in organs that are fragile organs such as the liver. We said that is where you're going to find reticular fibers, and reticular fibers are produced by cells known as reticulocytes. That is a type of fibroblast. And then we went ahead and talked about elastic fibers. We said that elastic fibers are usually found in organs that are supposed to be those organs that should be stretchy, organs that blood vessels, which should stretch when there is blood passing through, when the pressure of the blood is high. So that is where we find elastic fibers. We can also find elastic fibers in organs such as organs such as elastic cartilage. For example, the cartilage that makes up the pinna of the ear, which is why when somebody pulls your ear, it's not like it's going to cut and get off. It's able to go back to its normal shape. Okay, you cannot say, no, my ears look like this because they were being pulled left, right, and center when I was young. It's just your genetics. If your ears are away from your head, it's just your genetic. Otherwise, they're supposed to be elasticated. So those are the fibers. We also went ahead and talked about extracellular matrix being made up of a substance, which is a gel-like substance, which is called ground substance. This is a gel where everything is, the cells, the fibers, they're there. And we said that this ground substance is made up of macromolecules. Most of these macromolecules are protein in nature. Macromolecules such as glycosaminoglycans, okay, macromolecules such as proteoglycans, okay, and all those kinds of things like multi-adhesive glycoproteins. All right, so all those are the things that make up the ground substance. So generally, that is what connective tissue is. And then we went ahead and classified connective tissue into 3 major types. The first one having been connective tissue proper, the second one being mucoid connective tissue, also known as embryonic connective tissue, and the third one being specialized connective tissue. Connective tissue proper, we said, is divided into areolar connective tissue, which is the loose connective tissue, and dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue, I'm fast because we've already covered these things. If you have questions, you are free to raise your hand and ask. Are we together, everyone?
Yes, madam.
So we did say that dense connective tissue is further divided into dense regular and dense irregular. And we talked about the organs. For example, dense irregular can be found in the pericardium, that lining of the heart. And then also in capsules covering some organs, okay? And then we went ahead and talked about dense regular connective tissue, which makes up organs such as the tendons. We went ahead and started looking at specialized connective tissue. We talked about cartilage, and we said that cartilage is of three types. Hyaline cartilage, we talked about the properties of hyaline cartilage. We talked about elastic cartilage. We talked about the properties of elastic cartilage. We went ahead and talked about fibrocartilage, and we talked about the properties of fibrocartilage. If there are any questions from the last session, you can go ahead and ask right now before we start looking at bones. Did you listen to that video? You did not?
Yes, madam.
Only one person did.
Oh, we did.
Because if it's if I want us to be very free, if you prefer for me to always be teaching live, I'll be teaching, as opposed to the idea where I send the videos and then you don't listen to them, then learning is not taking place. Okay, so we need to know what works best for everyone. Okay. Personally, I thought the videos would be helpful because you can listen to them several times. When you need revision, you can listen to them. All right. So today we're going to look at bones. Okay. Bone is another type of specialized connective tissue. Okay. Some of the functions of bone, like we already know, include support. Obviously, bones support the soft tissue of our body. It provides support, movement. Okay. It is because of the bones and their attachments to the muscles that the body is able to move from one place to another. All right. Protection. The bones are the ones that are specialized for protecting soft tissue organs such as the brain. Okay, the brain, the spinal cord, all these are enclosed in those small, nice cavities where they are nicely protected. Okay, I'm not moving the slide because I was just doing the revision. Whoever sent the message that it's stuck, it's not stuck. I wasn't moving the slides because what I was saying was just revision from the previous video, and I hope you have listened to that video. So initially I was not moving the slide. This is when we have started looking at the bones. And so the bones are so these are the functions of the bones. Now, when it's the volume problem should be on your side because I think the others are able to get me. Can people confirm if you're able to get me?
Yeah, clear, madam. I'm able to get you.
I think this person, maybe the volume is on her side. I have no idea. I hope she has someone to assist her. Okay. So the other function is storage of minerals. We all know that calcium makes up our bones and phosphorus. So that means that these minerals are stored in the bones. Okay. And then there is release. These minerals are released as ions into blood whenever necessary. Okay. With the help of hormones such as what hormone? Calcitonin, okay? All those kinds of, or parathormone. So those two hormones are antagonistic of one another in the release and in the keeping of calcium in the bones. And then we have blood cell formation in the bone marrow, which is part of the bones. You're going to find formation of red blood cells, and then you're going to find storage of energy in the yellow bone marrow. Okay, so those are some of the functions of bone. We're going to look at some terms that you're likely to find. This is a combination of terms that are used for cartilage and bone. So when you hear the word starting with chondro or even ending with chondro, then we're talking about cartilage. Anything that you hear the word where there is chondro. So chondrocyte, site means cell. So chondrocyte means cartilage cell or cell of cartilage. Endochondro, inside the cartilage. Perichondrium, that means the covering of cartilage. Osteo means bone. So anything that you hear the word bone, osteo, it means it has something to do with bone. Blasts refers to precursor cells, meaning the cells that are actually starting the job. Okay, for example, if a human being is in their reproductive stages, then they can be called a blast or a blast or woman, something like that. You are in your active stages of life. So you would find words like chondroblast, you would find words like osteoblast. That is what that means. And then we have the word site, which means cell. Therefore, you may find words like osteocyte. Okay. And then now we look at the classification of bones. Classification of bones, we have one, long bones. Okay, long bones are the ones that look, when you look at them, they look long. For example, the phalanges of the fingers. The difference is that the long bones will have two ends that are a little bit dilated. So even the phalanges will have two ends that are a little bit dilated, which are the epiphyses, and they will have something like a stem in between, which is known as the diaphysis. Okay, so that is how you're going to differentiate a long bone from other bones. All right, and then you have other bones, for example, short bones. Okay, you're going to have other bones which will be known. I can't find any example of short bones here, but hope we're going to find a picture. And then we have flat bones such as the sternum. All right, the sternum in between the ribs, which is part of the rib cage. Then we have irregular bones, such as the vertebral bones. Okay, we have irregular bones such as um, um, the vertebral bones. Okay, then you have pneumatized bones such as the ethmoid bones. All right, the ethmoid bone is this bone that is, it is in the skull. It helps to make the base of the skull. All right, so that is an example of a pneumatized bone, meaning it has spaces for air. Then we have sesamoid bones, such as the patella, okay, at the knee. Sesamoid bones, such as the patella at the knee. Okay, so these are examples of the short bones, the carpal bones. The carpal bones are examples of short bones. All right. So now the cells that you're going to find in the bones, we have cells such as osteoblasts. Osteoblasts are bones that deposit osteoid. Osteoid is, now I don't know this person who, there's no name, but the account is showing Infinix. Kindly mute your mic. Okay. So, so we are saying we have these cells known as the osteoblasts. The osteoblasts are the ones that are specialized into producing the extracellular matrix of bone. That extracellular matrix of bone is known as osteoid. The extracellular matrix of bone is known as osteoid. Okay, then we have two osteoclasts. These osteoclasts, they absorb bone. If the bone deposit has been deposited, too much bone has been deposited, too much osteoid, they go ahead and resorb the bone tissue so that the bone is left smooth and nice and the way it is supposed to be. And then we have osteocytes. Osteocytes are mature bone cells. These mature bone cells, they'll just be sitting there nicely. So if you get an example, for example, osteoblasts can be called the ones, if it's in human being, most you, I'm sure you guys are also still in your childbearing age, so we can be called osteoblasts. And then we have osteocytes. When we now grow, we reach menopause, we don't want to do anything, we retire, we just sit home, we've already worked, we've already done everything, and we've prepared things for ourselves to be eating and everything, and so will now be called osteocytes. Those are the osteocytes. The osteocytes are found in, I'll show you nicely what the lacuna are and what the lamella are. Okay, so the osteocytes are found in spaces known as lacuna. Okay, okay, so here we are. We have cells here. All these yellow things here are cells, and these cells are the osteocytes. Now, the way bone is, when you look at the gross structure, before I tell you exactly where the osteocytes are, I want us to look at the general gross structure of bone. But before we go there, I want you to look at this example of an osteoclast. I said that osteoclasts are bone resorbing cells. So this is an example of an osteoclast. This osteoclast is a combination of two monocytes. As they grow, they combine together and they form an osteoclast. And their function is to resorb bone. If too much osteoid has been deposited, they are going to start resorbing it and removing. So this is a place where they are going to they have done what? They have resorbed. And then we have a place where these osteoclasts settle, and that place is known as the Hauschips lacuna. They have nice places where they settle, and those places are known as the Hauschips lacuna. This diagram here is just simply showing us what happens. For example, in bone, we have, first we'll talk about the precursor cells in a bit as we start talking about periosteum. But meanwhile, since we've talked about the osteoblasts are developing from these precursor cells, and then the osteoblasts, they deposit osteoid around them. As they keep depositing osteoid around them, the osteoid becomes so much that it surrounds them, and so they mature and stop working, and so they are trapped in these tiny spaces, these tiny tiny spaces, okay? And so they are then called the osteocytes, all right? This is what, and the tiny spaces are known as the lacuna, okay? So this is what I wanted you to say, so before we go to the gross anatomy, we are going to now look at the matrix, the extracellular matrix of bone. What makes this extracellular matrix of bone? Okay, so extracellular matrix makes up 2/3 of the matrix and 65% of dry bone weight. And 85% of this is hydroxyapatite. You don't really have to just swatila these words. You don't really even have to, as long as you've swatila them and you're able to answer them in the exam, that's okay. So this is a crystallized calcium phosphate salt. There's also calcium carbonate, some magnesium, sodium, potassium, fluoride, sulfate, carbonate. All these are ions that are found in bone, okay? And then we have organic. We have organic, and this organic makes up 1/3 of the bone. These organic substances now, these are the ones where you find the fibers that we talked about found in connective tissue. So we have collagen type 1. Collagen type 1 is a very strong type of fiber, okay? And we have the ground substance is made up of the same proteoglycans, glycoproteins, glycosaminoglycans, just like every other connective tissue ground substance. And then we have these other organic substances, osteonectin. This osteonectin is the one that holds together everything in place. It holds together the fibers and as well as the ground substance, okay? And then we have osteocalcin, which is responsible for capturing calcium from the blood. As the blood is circulating, osteocalcin does what? Traps the calcium. Okay, now the gross anatomy of bones. Kindly, you are free to ask questions if you have questions as I'm talking. If I'm too fast, you're free to tell me so that I can reduce. I know the time will not be enough, but we'll just make another link and then start afresh, maybe at 20. Okay. So we have the gross anatomy of bones. Gross anatomy of bones. When you look at a bone, the outer part, even when you're eating chicken, the outer part is a bit harder than the inner part. That is how all bones are made of, all animals, okay? So you're going to find that the outer part has this hard part. So you're getting this bone. This is a long bone. This long bone has an outer part, which is the hard part, okay? And this hard part is known as the compact bone. So you get a small piece of, for example, you get a small piece from the diaphysis, okay? Because the composition of the diaphysis and the epiphysis are different. So you get a small piece of the diaphysis, and inside you will see this canal where you're going to find the yellow bone marrow. And we said that yellow bone marrow stores energy and heat. So you find the yellow bone marrow. On the outside, you're going to find compact bone, okay? You're going to find compact bone. When you go into the epiphysis, we made said that the ends of long bones, these parts that are a little bit dilated, these are known as the epiphyses. And when you go there, you get a small piece, you find that inside, you're going to find this spongy bone. This spongy bone. So spongy bone is also known as trabecular bone because of these trabecular, okay, these spikes inside. That is it. But on the outside still, you're going to find compact bone. And then external to the diaphysis, you are mostly going to find hyaline cartilage. We said that hyaline cartilage is the one that forms the is the one that forms articular surface, the cartilage, so that the bones do not I don't know what word I can use. So that they do not scratch against each other as you are moving around. Okay. And then you're going to find blood vessels. Blood vessels will usually enter the bone through foramina in the bone known as the nutrient foramen. So you're going to find that each bone may have one, or each long bone may have one or two nutrient foramen, a small foramen where the blood vessel is able to enter, and that foramen is known as the a nutrient foramen. Okay, so that is what that is. And then you're going to find that all the long bones are going to have membranes around them and inside them, lining the inside. So now the membrane that is on the outside is going to be known as periosteum, and the one that is on the inside is going to be known as the endosteum. These two membranes are made up of one, like we said, dense irregular connective tissue. We said that this one usually makes up linings of certain organs, in this case the bones. And then under that connective tissue, the dense irregular connective tissue, we have another layer. So the periosteum is a bilayer membrane. It has two layers. It has an outer layer which is made up of dense connective tissue, and an inner layer which is an osteogenic layer which contains the cells, these cells here, which are precursors of the blood forming cells. And those cells are found in the inner lining of the periosteum. Okay, so that is what that is. Okay, so we've talked about these things, the epiphysis, the diaphysis, the epiphyseal or the epiphyseal line. It's in adults, this line here is the epiphyseal line. In children, it is known as the epiphyseal growth plate. The epiphyseal growth plate is a plate when we're going to do development of bones. So as the bone is developing, it develops from hyaline cartilage. So as the bone develops, there is calcification here and in the epiphyses, but there is a small plate of cartilage that remains between the diaphysis and the epiphyses, and that plate of cartilage allows for elongation of the long bones. Once you are done growing, okay, you are going to find that there's just going to be a line where which is going to be called the epiphyseal line. Okay, there's going to be a line which is going to be called the epiphyseal line. So that is what that is. And then we have spongy flat bones. Okay, we have flat bones. Flat bones have the inside. Remember we said that every bone has on the outside the compact bone, all right? So the difference between the flat bones and the long bones is that the flat bones do not have the canal where you find yellow bone marrow. They only have spongy bone inside, and this spongy bone is known as diploid. The spongy bone is known as diploid. So the presentation is almost cutting. When it cuts, I'll make another link. Kindly log in when I do so. Okay, so we are saying that they have in the diploid, we're going to find bone marrow, but there will be no bone cavity. Okay, so this is how the flat bones are made. All right. The other thing that I did not mention when I was talking about periosteum is we are going to find that periosteum is attached to the bone itself by fibers. Fibers will be perforating the bone itself, and those fibers are going to be called the Sharpey's fibers. These perforating fibers are also going to be known as the Sharpey's fibers. Okay, that is, and then the inner layer also, the endosteum, is also osteogenic, meaning it also has precursor cells for osteoblasts, and can also the cells there can also produce osteoid. Okay, so when you look at the gross structure of a long bone, the compact bone, we start with the compact bone of the long bone. We are going to find that, remember this picture is, we get this picture and we cut off a small piece here. And then this same piece, we cut off another small piece and we magnify it. When we magnify that small piece, this is what we are going to see. Okay, we are going to notice that we have the periosteum here, which is made up of two layers, of course. The outer fibrous layer, which is made up of dense irregular connective tissue, and the inner osteogenic layer, which is made up of precursor cells for osteoblasts. That layer, when the cells start depositing osteoid, osteoid is deposited in such a way that it makes concentric layers. Okay, concentric layers, something like you are wrapping around something. Okay, those are concentric layers. And then those concentric layers are arranged in such a way that there is going to be formation of several of these, okay? Several of these, where there'll be concentric layers here, concentric layers there, concentric layers there, and on all these concentric layers, you're going to have a canal inside. Now, each of these concentric layers is known as these layers are known as lamellae. The layers, for example, one layer. So this is I can say one cylinder-like thing. So you get it, you magnify it, and you find that there is this one concentric layer which is supposed to go around, and that is called a lamella. A lamella 1, another lamella 2, another lamella, just like that. And in the middle, we have a canal here where blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves are going to be passing. Okay, now one of these is known as an osteon. So these concentric layers put together with the canal in the middle is known as an osteon. All right, so we have these layers, and then in the middle we have that canal. The canal in the middle is known as the Havasian canal or the central canal. We have the Havasian canal or the central canal, which is made because there are concentric layers being wrapped around it, and those concentric layers are plural, known as lamellae, singular, known as lamella. Okay, now this lamella, remember we said that there is going to be the blood, the cells, the osteoblasts, which deposit the lamella, and when they deposit enough, they get trapped in small spaces known as lacuna. Okay, the small spaces, each space where there's an osteocyte is known as a lacuna. Okay, and then these lacuna, the osteocytes, there are a lot of them, and they have processes. If you can see, they have all these foot processes, and they communicate with one another. They communicate with one another through channels that are going to be known as the canaliculi. One channel is known as a canaliculus. Several of these channels are known as canaliculi. We're saying that these osteocytes are trapped in small spaces known as lacuna. The osteocytes have foot processes that communicate with one another, and as they communicate with one another, those processes pass through small spaces known as canaliculi. Okay, so we have this osteon here. The osteon is made up of concentric layers of lamellae. In the middle, we have a canal known as the Havesian canal or the central canal. Between all the lamellae, we're going to find osteocytes. Osteocytes have foot processes which communicate with one another through small spaces, through small channels known as the canaliculi. Okay, now these Havesian canals in the middle, they also communicate one with the other because that is where blood vessels pass. From one osteon to the next osteon, there is going to be communication. Now, the channel between one Havesian canal to another Havesian canal, this small channel here, from this Havesian canal to this Havesian canal, these channels are known as the Volkmann's canals. So we have this Volkmann's canal here, another Volkmann's canal here, another Volkmann's canal here. That is what we are talking about. So we are saying osteons are these pillars, and then we have these pillars that are made up of the osteoid that has been calcified, and that those are known as lamellae. The lamellae have spaces where they have trapped osteocytes. Osteocytes communicate with one another through small channels known as canaliculi. The Havesian canals in the middle of each osteon communicates with the next Havesian canal through small channels known as the Volkmann's canal. Any questions? So we wait for this one to finish. We have less than a minute before this session finishes. Any questions? So
We are following, madam.
you're following? Okay. Okay, so let me make another link so that we continue. At least we finish bone today. I wanted us to start blood as well, but maybe we may not manage. We'll see.
Okay, madam.